This is an origin story, and this is Hillary Clinton's fault.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Free Range Politics. I'm your host, Torrey Snow.
And I'm Yuripzy Morgan.
On today's episode, Graham Platner is finally causing Democrats to see the light, and they have told him to hit the road. But why did it take so long? Also, Governor Moore has made Maryland a sanctuary state, or did he simply just allow it? Either way, we're getting sued by the Department of Justice. Also, the General Assembly in Maryland is going to be meeting from August 3rd to August 5th in order to figure out new and creative ways to alienate every Republican voter in the state of Maryland. Also, Arundel County getting sued because they secretly transitioned a student. We'll get into the details there and what the implications of that might be. And then, of course, Mitch McConnell, is he alive or what? So we'll talk about all of that and more. But first, Graham Platner, story of the day. Why on earth? Like whenever I think about Graham Platner, I think about the meme of the guy with like the glasses and the stick, and all the Democrats are like, "What? I didn't see anything. What are you talking about? I don't know. The Nazi tattoo. I didn't see any of that." And now all of a sudden, oh, yeah, this is a pretty horrible guy. Like, how did we miss this? I don't know, Yuripzy Morgan. How did they miss this?
How indeed. So if you're just now coming up for air, he did announce this week that he is going to be withdrawing from the Maine Senate race. And here's a little bit from his announcement saying that he's out.
This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power.
He said something super important there. So the Nazi tattoo apparently was not enough. Right? The other allegations of past bad behavior, of, abuses towards other women, that was not enough. It was this latest allegation of rape from an ex-girlfriend that seems to be very credible and corroborated by other evidence. That apparently was enough. Except he never said, "Oh, I did it," or "I'm sorry." What he's saying is that basically it was the establishment. Yeah. And Torrey, that's what I think is so important, because maybe the establishment wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
So some of his consultants, right, have come out and they have said, especially the two main ones have come out. They did a sit-down interview with the Wall Street Journal, and it was so eye-opening how absolutely bonkers they were. But I got to tell you, Torrey, this is an origin story, and this is Hillary Clinton's fault. Yeah, I'll tell you why. So if you go back to Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, that's where these people came from. So you know me, I've always been a big fan of origin stories. I love like the super villain, Joker, where did they come from story. That's exactly what you have here. So if you remember back during that election, that primary election, was it 2015? Yeah, it was 2015, with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And it was hers to lose. They literally were just waiting. Democrats were just waiting for time to pass so they could crown her and then move on, right? And then what happened? Bernie Sanders got in the way. Bernie Sanders came out, and all of a sudden you had the Bernie bros, and he was doing. Now, I'm a Republican, so I was looking at this with horror, but you cannot negate the fact that Bernie Sanders came in like a wrecking ball, and he was out of nowhere, super popular, so popular that Democrats had to do the super delegate thing in order to get Hillary Clinton to win that primary, right? Well, a lot of these people that you see now, especially the consultant that was Graham Platner's, the guy who discovered him, was one of the super volunteers, Bernie Sanders super volunteers, Bernie Bros, and they started this organization. He became part of this organization called Justice Democrats. Do you know who else they're responsible for?
I don't. Who?
2018 AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman. That is who this entire organization, I think they were so livid at the way the Democratic Party establishment treated Bernie Sanders and what they saw as what the party actually wanted, right? Not the establishment, but what the party wanted, the people wanted, and they said, to hell with this. So I think they have been on an anti-democratic establishment crusade, and because of that, they were more focused on, we don't want these, kind of establishment Democrats. And actually, we have a clip from part of that interview where he talks about, some of the things that they dug up when they were vetting him. But did it really matter? Take a listen.
How did you go about vetting him?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money, and
got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back. Other stuff we didn't.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts,
Yeah.
but it didn't have all of them.
It had some of them, Torrey. It didn't have all of them. It didn't have everything. What do you think about that?
I don't know what to think about. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. So walking back through, so you have this anti-establishment movement, which does track, right? There was I remember the Bernie Bros and this tremendous amount of frustration. We hate the establishment. And again, when you were talking and describing this, I was trying to figure out if you were talking about Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, right? Because that was pretty much
Super
identical from the primary, from that situation there. So now that you're mentioning and making that connection, my first thought is like, we always look at Donald Trump as having changed politics, but at that time, we really did just see this insurgents against the establishment. It's just that on the Republicans, the insurgents won. And the Democrat side, the insurgents lost, right?
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton retained. And so then you basically saw the continuation of that power. But unlike the Republicans who are still dealing with the consequences of that, we kind of got Donald Trump almost right away. Now I think with Graham Platner, we're beginning to see like this is like their version of Donald Trump, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is what's happening when you have someone that successfully topples the establishment. So again, going back to your original point, like I think you're right. Like sometimes the establishment does matter. And again, I'm a fight the power, in the system kind of guy. But
Down with the man.
I have learned over the years that there is value in vetting, right? There's value in asking these difficult questions and trying to get down to the bottom, because when you're in politics, people will do and say anything in order to get into these positions of power. And so like, I'm looking at these Democrats and I'm like, so first of all, we tried to warn you way back when this was starting that on the Republican side, our party just lost the battle. You guys are losing the battle. My big takeaway is in the context of that, like maybe we need to rethink this whole anti-establishment. Maybe I need to rethink my anti-establishment. I'm an independent right now and I'm very frustrated with both political parties, but I'm like, there is something to having established processes and resources to look into the backgrounds of these folks.
Well,
That's
listen,
my thought.
ask any supervillain. It matters how you treat people.
Yeah.
It really does. Like one of my favorite, this isn't even like a true supervillain story, but did you ever watch Megamind?
Oh, yeah.
I love Megamind. Who ends up being the villain in that story,
To his
Torrey?
brother, yeah.
No, it's the random camera guy
Is it? Oh.
in Megamind. Remember with
What am
the
I
big
thinking
blue
about?
head?
Yeah. Oh, I'm thinking about a different one. I'm thinking, is that the one that has the brother who's the hero?
Oh, sort of. But he ends up creating. Remember, he supposedly gets rid of the superhero.
Yeah.
But actually, the superhero goes in hiding because he's like, I'm done with this. I just
But
want to go hang out.
he wasn't the bad guy in that one?
No, the bad guy ends up being the cameraman.
Okay. But he
Of
did
the
have a big
reporter.
brother, right?
I don't think so.
The big guy in the white suit.
Okay, you're gonna have to watch that movie again.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
the villain ends up being the random cameraman
Okay, yeah, I don't
who they were
remember
rude to. And I'm just saying, like, go back through supervillain history. That's basically what happens. And so when you look at what happened to Bernie Sanders, right? I remember that time because I was sitting here thinking, wow, I didn't realize that Democrats had gotten that progressive, that he was doing so well. And remember, the only reason he lost was because Democrats have a little thing called super delegates, where I guess in their primary you can win the majority of the votes in the state. But then they have these super delegates that come in and say, anyways, we're worth like 1 million points.
Yes.
And therefore, we win. It's like the Targaryens having dragons. Like, nice, you guys put up a fight, but we
What's
have
a
dragons, so we
Targaryen?
win. The Targaryens? Have you not watched Game of Thrones?
Is that like Daenerys, the
Yes.
dragon lady? Okay.
Yes.
So she has a you're catching me off guard on all these pop culture references. I'm in a totally different sphere. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
so for
everybody.
anybody who has watched, yes, the Game of Thrones, so basically if you have a dragon, you kind of win, right? So that's what they did with the super delegates. And if you think about it, back then, you had Donna Brazile coming out and saying, I don't know, it wasn't criminal, but it was definitely unfair. Even Elizabeth Warren came out and said the party is going to have to make amends with the Bernie Sanders supporters. Did they
Right.
ever make amends?
No, they basically left them out. I mean, look, and they kind of did it again with Joe Biden, right? Because remember with that whole thing, he came out of nowhere and they had like Andrew Yang was gaining momentum. Kamala Harris was not popular at all. But I remember in that primary, they dogged a lot of those candidates that turned around and bit them, right? Didn't
Yes.
one of them join the Trump administration? Who was it? Tulsi Gabbard?
Oh yeah, Tulsi
She was.
Gabbard.
She ran she was a Democrat. So like,
Yeah.
I do feel that you're actually really onto something about when you mistreat people and you treat them poorly and you basically push your own agenda, but then ignore the fact that you have stepped on a lot of people. Some of those people will come back to bite you, right?
Yes.
And it will definitely, create problems that ultimately make life harder overall. And so would Graham Platner fall into this category, or
Well, it's his consultants.
So the consultants.
The
Do you think?
consultants. I mean, his consultants. So the main consultant that we just heard there in that Dan Moraff and Leanne Fan. These were the people who I think Dan Moraff is a Yale law student, I believe, and he was the main consultant that came out and said, "Oh, we sifted through like thousands of profiles, and then we found this guy." And here's the crazy thing to me.
Okay.
They are super insurgent, right? They come in and they're with this Justice Democrats thing, and they're like, we're going to totally buck the establishment. Because remember, Maine's governor, Democrat, was going to run, and everybody was like, no, we want this other guy. The crazy thing is they picked him because they felt like he was the most responsive and the one that most people would relate to in working class. So the establishment is very like, oh, we're elite, they're the which is funny for a guy who's at Yale Law School, but whatever. So anyways, they're like, they're the elites, we're gonna be the more working class. So their method to attract the working class is to get a guy who has a beard and is an oyster farmer and has a military background. And so it's almost like they're trying to cosplay working class. And then, so they do this very cheap vetting. It's not even that cheap. It's like $6,500, I think, is what they paid. But it's not the $20,000 that you would normally pay for these kinds of things that take months. But I want you to hear what they had to say in this Wall Street Journal interview. They said, part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats. They want people who are real human beings, and they want people who do not look like the vat-grown people who have been leading this country off a cliff for the past century, and that was Graham. Now, say what you will about how wrong they were, Torrey. Did you know that Graham Platner actually got the most votes in a Democratic primary in Maine history?
In an off-cycle election.
In an off-cycle election.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
That's huge, which means he got a lot of support. And
Which means they
people
weren't
knew
wrong.
about him.
That means that these consultants were not wrong about the type of voter that Democrats want. I mean, type of candidate that Democrats want. They just happened to find somebody who was a horrendous candidate who had Nazi tattoos.
Did they not know? Like, so he's alleging he just didn't know. So if this had been a decent guy, their plan would have worked according to plan.
Yeah, they got AOC. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
And
it would have
Tlaib and all these
gone
others.
according to plan, but they. And I think that kind of is the question, right? Did they intentionally overlook? Because that's what I personally, again, not knowing, I don't follow Maine politics, I don't know all the ins and outs. It's hard for me to say that any vetting process involving something as important as a Senate seat in a midterm election where it is critical, absolutely critical in order to win this seat. I mean, remember, just a couple weeks ago, Sonny Hostin was on The View saying, I know he's a horrible guy, but this seat is so important that we have to vote for him.
And if it takes getting behind someone like Plattner, which 51% of voters in Maine say that they will get behind him as opposed to 42%. If I lived in Maine, I would hold my nose and I would pull that lever and I would vote for him. That's it.
Yeah, so that's why I'm like, okay, so are we simply focused on the seat, or is it, but again, given the information that you're providing, which is valuable, right? He's a good, in the sense he looks great, like he's the kind of person that people want in this office. Like, I don't know. That's a really
keep in mind what I'm saying. So I think that her comments were made before this most recent allegation of rape, right? So what I'm saying is two things. One, I don't think the establishment, like maybe there is more value to the establishment than some of these insurgent groups like MAGA, like the Justice Democrats would like to think. There is some value in that wisdom, in that establishment, in that vetting process, right? Because they probably would have caught some of these things. But two, I think that Democrats have got to reconcile their establishment with their super progressive, like, I'm sorry, you cannot treat them anymore as just like these annoying kids who are the Bernie bros and like a fly on the wall. Like, just ignore them, right?
Because they know.
You can't treat them like that anymore.
They know. Again, I think it's super compelling that you mentioned that he got maximum turnout, right, in an off-cycle election. That means something. They picked a candidate that resonated with people. So clearly this consultant, you know, regardless of him missing the things in the vetting, he knew what he was doing. Right, and
I wouldn't say that he knew exactly what he was doing. Like, he has actually been around for a while, and there are a couple of other races that he's been in, some local races where he has actually a history of picking people who, yes, do resonate with voters, but end up having to drop out because of horrendous things in their past.
But again, resonating with the vote. That's all I was saying. I'm not saying he's a great person. I'm saying that he picked someone that resonated with voters.
Which also,
and if you're narrowly focused, and that's again to your point about the establishment, right? If you're someone who just wants to win an election, you're thinking about the primary, I want to win, then you're not going to think about that stuff. Establishment candidates are like, okay, this person looks great. I'm looking at it like a dad, right? Like my daughter, I'm certain that at some point, some guy is going to come along and catch her eye, and she's going to be like, Daddy, I want you to meet Zane, right? And I'm like, oh. Now, again, she may see him, and he may be so nice, and yes, ma'am, I treat her well. Do you know what I'm looking for? How is this man going to treat my daughter 20 years from now? Like, what's really going on? What are your true intentions, right? Because I know what's going on. And so that's what the establishment does, right? The establishment has the experience. The establishment looks and says, okay, this is great. We've seen politicians come and go. We've seen these people rise and they do this stuff, but we've been experienced enough to know that this is something that can happen down the road. And so what happens is that even though all the people are saying, no, this is great. This is a wonderful candidate. We love him. He's perfect. He's an oyster farmer. He's one of us.
Like,
the establishment might come back and they might say, okay, but let's find out, like, I don't know, does he have any Nazi tattoos? And to me, like, when this stuff started coming out, that's when the establishment says, I know you guys are excited. I get it, right? I understand that you really like this guy. He's not for us. Right. Again,
I get that. The problem is, though, and this is why I say that they have to be honest and reconcile, because the establishment has not been that benevolent. The establishment has not played. Yes, and not only that, but I think that they messed up so big when they, dare I use the Donald Trump phrase, stole that election from Bernie Sanders. Like, I'm sorry, but you want to talk about an actual stolen election? He got more votes than Hillary Clinton, and then they have these super delegates that come in and take it away from him. And I'm telling you, this guy, what do I call this consultant, Dan Moraff, was one of Bernie Sanders' super volunteers. You don't think that he buried that somewhere inside of him?
So you think this is malicious?
No, I think this was a response. I think this was something where he looked at that and said, I'm done with the establishment. I'm going to do my own thing. And so he and these Justice Democrats and these other people who purposely decided to buck the establishment did so in large part because they saw how they were treated and how unfair the establishment was to them. And all I'm saying is, Democrats, I have seen this happen in my own party. You know, at this point, I'm like, the house is already on fire over here. I'm just trying to tell you guys to check the alarm, all right? Check it, because what I have seen happen in my own party is coming to a neighborhood near you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I find that fascinating. So I will say one of the other, we talk about made in a lab politicians, right? And we'll get to Governor Moore in a minute. But I think that the frustration with our politics is so intense that more and more people are becoming independents. More and more people are just deciding they don't want anything to do with politics, which is why we started this podcast. And so we do want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to our Patreon, go to our YouTube channel. The link is right there. You can click the link. You can become a $5 a month subscriber, and you can support this platform. You can help us create more great content and help us generate. We just want to connect with you, right? We want to resonate with you and give you the content that you're interested in. So become a Patreon subscriber, $5 a month. You can also subscribe to us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all the platforms, making sure we're keeping good content out for you. Here in Maryland, we're kind of dealing with the situation where we are a sanctuary state now, and we're a sanctuary state officially, not because Governor Moore decided this was going to be his executive agenda. As a matter of fact, he didn't want this. We are a sanctuary state because Governor Moore has no power in the state of Maryland. He has no influence, and so the General Assembly said, we want to be a sanctuary state, and Governor Moore says, fine, do what you want, I guess. I'm running for president. So that's the vibe right now, and as a result of that, the state of Maryland is being sued by the Department of Justice, and because they don't like the fact that we're fighting against ICE here.
Yeah. So I mean, the whole thing is like the Maryland General Assembly passed the Community Trust Act, and that has certain provisions about judicial warrants versus administrative warrants, and then not letting local law enforcement voluntarily contact ICE. So there are all these things that are going into it. So the federal government, I mean, like obviously, you know, it's President Trump, so he's going to look for a way, and we're already on his bad side, you know, Maryland. I mean, the state of Maryland is already on his bad side. So they're suing us now, and I think what you said is absolutely correct. So Governor Moore allowed this to become law without his signature. And I just want to say, so we just had this whole big segment about progressives, right, and what progressives really want. This is what is going to be his Achilles heel, right? Wes Moore will fail because he is not a sincere candidate. He is a fake candidate. And I'm telling you this as somebody who lives in Maryland, Torrey. You and I know there are times when he says things in a press conference that sound very much like a Republican, very conservative. And then everybody kind of gets off his back. And then what does he do behind closed doors, Torrey? He caves to whatever Democrat progressive policy. And sometimes he caves like outright, and sometimes he just doesn't put his signature on it.
Yeah, look, the General Assembly went to him and says, we want to ban 287G agreements across the state. Now, again, Governor Moore wants to run for president. Like, I don't care what he says, he wants to run for president. Yeah. So the General Assembly, rather than going through the process, they went to Governor Moore and says, we're putting emergency legislation in. And I think they wrote a speech for him, and he read the speech. Here's an excerpt from that speech about ICE that he read.
By funding, ICE is the 13th largest military force in the world. ICE received more funding last year than our entire state budget. And we've seen the results of an unaccountable agency with seemingly unlimited resources. We've seen 5-year-old children detained.
Now, if you look there, you can see Jocelyn Pena-Melnick and Bill Ferguson. They are the ones that run things. They wrote that man a speech, said, here's the legislation, you sign it, you read this speech, and we'll be all happy. Emergency legislation.
I could believe if the story went like that. I mean, because listen, they're the real power, and they're the real progressives. I do want to tell you, he responded to this lawsuit, and here's what he said. Maryland will work with the federal government when that coordination makes our people safer, but we will not let Donald Trump's untrained, unqualified, and unaccountable ICE agents deputize our law enforcement officers to do immigration work, blah, blah, blah. He kind of goes on. But I just want everybody who thinks that Wes Moore is anti-ICE, that he's anti-federal immigration policy. This statement to me is like what I say when I'm trying to get out of something, you know?
Yeah.
When my kids are like, can we do this? Can we do this? Can I go? Can you take me here? And I'm like, I will talk with your father when he gets home. And basically what I'm saying is, I don't want to say no yet, but I'm going to say no later.
Just need to find out how.
Yes, I got to figure out a way out of this. Yes. I just don't want to deal with your fit right now. Maryland will work with federal government when that coordination makes our people safer. He will work with ICE. He is not against working with ICE.
He can't take a strong position on this because he wants to run for president, right? And the problem is, like, when you look at immigration policy, again, mass deportation, that's not popular, right? Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants that. That's very, very unpopular. But most Americans are like, if you're a member of MS-13, if you're doing crimes, get out, right? Like, that's the vibe. But again, going to your earlier point about these progressive Democrats, he's not allowed to say that, right? He's literally not allowed to have any of those opinions. Like in that, like that excerpt I just played, I don't believe he believes that. I don't think he doesn't care about ICE, and he didn't even know that they're not a military organization, right? It's civilian law enforcement. But we'll set that aside for now.
Will chew him
Absolutely, he's going to chew it because he does not care about this. So again, for those that are looking to Governor Moore and they're saying, "Oh, well, you're standing strong against Donald Trump," and no, that's not what's happening at all, right? He didn't even have the courage to either sign the legislation, right, to say that we're going to support our legislators in making Maryland a sanctuary state, and didn't even veto it to say we're not going to be a sanctuary state. He's the worst kind of politician and has left Maryland in the worst position possible.
And now here we are getting sued, and we don't have the money to get sued, Torrey. Maryland is broke. We're like billions of dollars
begging
in
for
the
money
hole.
right now for a bridge right now, which could be up to $10 billion, maybe even more, and we want the federal government to pay for it.
Yeah, we don't have the money to be getting sued. But that's not all that we have going on in Maryland, right? We have a special session that is being called, and this is regards to gerrymandering. I thought this was over with, Torrey. I thought we were done with this, but of course we're not. This is why we really, really need our supporters to support the Patreon. You can join for as little as $5, $15 a month, or if you want to be super generous, even $50 a month. And then we can bring you all the latest news, including stories about gerrymandering, special sessions, and all of these stories that just kind of pop up throughout the week. So we hope that you will take the time to become a paid Patreon subscriber. It will go a long way to helping us bring you more news as it happens. So, Torrey, I feel like you weren't surprised by this, but Maryland, the General Assembly has decided to call a special session just when we thought that the gerrymandering conversation, the debate was over. They found a way around this. If the rules don't work for you, why not just change the rules?
So believe it or not, this doesn't surprise. It didn't. Wait, did you say it wouldn't surprise me or did surprise me? It surprised me that they did this. It really did, because they're gonna do a constitutional amendment, right? They're gonna try to do something that will fundamentally remove the guardrails for drawing districts, and I think that it will draw an incredible amount of attention. It's super high risk for Governor Moore, right? Because he didn't have any vulnerabilities. All he needed to do was get through November. If this ballot measure fails, this absolutely torpedoes any national ambitions that he has. So that's why it surprised me. It's a very risky thing. But again, he doesn't control the General Assembly. They do. So they don't care about what he cares about.
I don't think that it's risky for him because, so think about this. And for those of you who are not quite as familiar with what's been the mess that's been going on in Maryland, we do know, right, that nationally there has been this gerrymandering fight.
Yep.
There's Texas and California and everybody else that's doing it, right? I will say, at least in California, Gavin Newsom had the balls to just say, I am gerrymandering because Republicans suck. Right. That's basically what he said. And he's like, everybody can go pound sand. This is what I'm doing. Wes Moore lives on the fence. He is that middle ground because he wants to attract not just Democrats, but he's trying to attract those independents and some of those soft Republicans as well. And so his approach has been, I'm doing this because of democracy and because it's important, you know, and all of us that are sitting here in Maryland, like, we have one Republican congressman. Our state it has 2.2 million Democrats, a little over 1 million Republicans, and a little over 1 million independents. So you mean to tell me in a state that is 49% not Democrat, the entire state delegation needs to be Democrat? It's insane. I hope Gavin Newsom just hands him his everything.
Look, here, I think that there are several problems with this, right? So first of all, the reason they're gerrymandering, which, by the way, they just did a UNBC poll just a few months ago. 80% of Marylanders think that partisan gerrymandering is wrong. 80%. So the polling is pretty clear. Marylanders don't want him to do this, right? This is because Governor Moore desperately needs a win, right? He desperately needs something to prove that he has a level of leadership. And I think that in the context of this being so bad, like unpopular in general, I don't know what his rationale is, right? From a local perspective of how this is good for Maryland. And it's not. It's terrible for Maryland. I mean, if you go through and basically rewrite our Constitution, the only reason we got the maps that people like right now is because the Constitution had these guardrails in place to say, no, you can't have the political parties drawing their own legislative districts or congressional districts in this situation. I think that all of that really played into a situation where now we kind of have no idea what we're going to do as a state when it comes to these maps.
So there's been this fight, right? This national fight about gerrymandering. And in Maryland, Governor Moore was very adamant, we are going to have redistricting. We're going to do this. And then it failed because the Senate president, Bill Ferguson, said, we are not going to do this, and I'm in charge. Like, he's literally the gatekeeper. It doesn't happen if he does not put it on the Senate floor. And he was doing it because he's not an idiot. And he was like, okay, the last time we tried this, the courts literally slapped down our map. And the map that we have right now is not set in stone. It actually hasn't been tested by the court. So I think his very real fear was that if we try to change it, it's going to go to court.
Yep.
That one will get slapped down. And the one we have right now that actually benefits Democrats will probably get slapped down too. So that's why he said, I'm not going to do it. It's interesting that it took them so long to realize, like, oh, well, why don't we just, the only reason it got struck down by the courts was because the Maryland Constitution has certain parameters about geographically, you know, what body, you can't cross the freaking Chesapeake Bay, right?
Right.
But if you change the rules and say, okay, well, that part of the Constitution is gone, we will simply amend the Constitution. And that's what they're proposing now.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just amend the Constitution so that if they try to strike it down on what?
And if they get it on the ballot, it will probably pass, not because it's a good idea, but because ballot initiatives tend to pass, right?
Yeah.
And there will likely be a lot of money flowing in to say, hey, we need to fight back against Trump. This is your way to get back at Trump, you know, things like
all
that.
how you tell the story.
But the problem is the consequences of this they're gonna resonate long into the future, right? If they're successful with this, it will be devastating, right? Because this pretty much the only thing that is keeping the Democrats, which have pretty much complete control in the Senate and the House, the veto-proof majority. Every now and then, Republicans can get a Republican in the State House. If they get these congressional maps in, there will never, ever be another Republican elected in Maryland again. I really do believe that.
See, I don't think it's that. What I do think will end up happening, because they want to, well, you know, we'll do another show where we kind of get into the logistics of how the map would actually, what it would actually probably look like. But for me, I think it is so disingenuous for Westmore. So have you ever seen this? There's a YouTube like podcast show, I guess, called Surrounded.
Yeah.
And Wes Moore was on this show, and I just want you to hear the Wes Moore that's in this video clip, Torrey, compared to the Wes Moore that you and I experience here in Maryland. Take a listen.
Because I've seen it firsthand. I have seen how everything is a policy decision in our life. The water we drink is a policy decision. The air we are breathing, that is a policy decision. The neighborhoods we're policed and how we're policed. That everything I have realized and learned is a policy decision. And I think about for my own family. Like, I don't come from a family that's used to making the policies. I come from a family that's used to suffering the consequences of them. And so I know that the policies that are being made are being made in our name, with our money, with our tax dollars, but oftentimes they do not reflect what we actually hope for. And that's why I believe that we have a responsibility to make sure we have the right people in the right seats that are making the right decisions.
See, it's candidates like him that end up giving you Graham Platners.
Yeah.
Because people get sick of the establishment. To hear Wes Moore, and I listened to the majority of that Surrounded.
Bless
there
your
was,
heart.
I do. I deserve an award, right? But to hear him, the whole point of that was all these young folk who were saying, my voice doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. And so his job was to try to convince them that, yes, your voice matters. Yeah. And when you hear him in that segment, Torrey, doesn't he just sound so like just somebody who really cares, so genuine, somebody who is going to really look out for you.
I care about you.
Yeah.
Like, I understand what you're telling me. And he would say that all the time. There was one point in that I did watch, you know, I had to, and that's why you need to be part of the Patreon. I need to be reimbursed for that. I understand you. I understand you, and I see you. Remember that scene? I understand your pain. No, you do not care about anything other than your own ambitions, and that's what this calling for this special session is literally him giving a big middle finger to anyone that's not a Democrat. That's literally what it is.
49% of the state
do not care, and when they remove these guardrails, like the Democrats can draw the maps however they want. Like there's nothing, there's nothing in the Constitution. In Virginia, remember how Virginia people were like, this is not a great map and everything. It was the Virginia Constitution, those guardrails, which is why we have these Constitution that prevented that from happening. In Maryland, they're like, we're not making that same mistake. We're just taking the Constitution away. I think it is completely hypocritical of Governor Moore to go down that road.
It is. I think he's absolutely, it's good luck. Good luck to the rest of us. All right, so let's move on to another story. This is also a local story, Torrey, and this has to do with Arundel County schools. So just when I was wondering if I really needed to cut another check for private school tuition when I live in a blue ribbon Arundel County school district, my choice was reaffirmed because the school district is now being sued. So this has to do with a transgender policy. Now, I want to be very clear, right, because this is not going to be a show where we're going to take a hard line on either side. I think that part of the reason that we have not had significant, or we haven't had very good conversations about transgender issues, particularly in our schools, is because everybody runs to their corner.
Right.
And either you are completely anti, trans or whatever, or like it's all about parental rights, or on the other side, it's like everybody can be whatever they want to be. And you can't have a productive conversation that way.
Correct.
This story is slightly different, Torrey. So let me tell you what happened. So first of all, these parents got an email on December 10th. And the email was talking about a school experiment, like a lab experiment or something. And they used a kid's name that the parents didn't recognize. It was a male name. And so they didn't recognize the name. They talked to the school, and then the staff, somebody apparently tried to recall that email. I don't know how the parents became aware of that, but they tried to recall the email saying that it actually wasn't meant for the parents, like not for your eyes, don't worry about it. Which of course, look at your eyes, you're like,
Wait a minute, give me that back. Give me see what you got going on there.
Yeah, so mistake number 2, I guess. So then the next day the parents spoke to the staff member who, and I quote, this comes from the Baltimore Banner, admitted to lying in the emails, end quote, and explained that the name the male name that they didn't recognize was actually their child who had decided not to go by the female name that she was given, but a male name. And so apparently the parents all of a sudden are like, wait, what is happening in this school? What is happening with my child? So then the parents told the school to use their kid's given name, and the school said, no. Arundel County has a school policy that says that students have the right to be addressed by a name and pronoun that correspond to the student's gender identity. So now they're getting sued.
Regardless of what the parents say.
Regardless of what the parents say.
Okay.
And so, of course, this has the makings, right? The origins of an us versus them conversation. That is not the conversation that I want to have, Torrey, because as a parent whose children will be at some point in Arundel County Public Schools again, this is frightening because when people go to their corners, we forget the most important thing, and that is the safety and well-being of these kids.
Right, and I don't think that there is anyone in almost every situation. There are exceptions, right, and people are going to run to this, but in most cases, the parents are the ones that are responsible for that child. The parents have accountability for that child. They need to know. And again, in a situation like this, again, regardless of your feelings on what any of this is, the fact that a school is actively in conflict with a parent, that should be a problem for everybody. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. You should be concerned about that, right? You should be concerned if a school is getting a request from a parent, and the request is not unreasonable, right? The parent is saying, we gave this child a name, and it is in their best interest that they, be referred to by this name. If the parent says that, then the school needs to say, fine, that's what we're going to do. But in this case, the school is saying, well, we know what you're saying, but we think it's better for the child if we do this. That's not your decision to make, right? You're not paying that child's rent. You're not the one that's responsible. You're not the one that's going to be in trouble if that child does anything. The school should not be making decisions like this. And that's my main issue, is that the school thinking that it has more authority than the parent.
Yeah, imagine if an adult that you were, just an adult went to your child and said, don't tell your parents this. Or we're not going to tell them this.
We literally train our children not to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's frustrating to me. Like, this is not an anti or a pro. I know that some people are going to make it, an anti-trans or a pro-trans sort of thing. That is not my conversation. As a parent, we've got to recognize, and I think there is empirical evidence, right, that children who are in the transitioning period, right, transgender students have a higher likelihood of suicide, of substance abuse. And as a parent, if you're not even going to tell me that my child is going through this, I'm not saying I'm pro or anti. I'm saying I need to know that my child is going through this.
The school always assumes, this is their basic assumption, is that if they tell the parents, then they're not going to support that child. And in the school's opinion, that's worse for the child. Right, that's their decision, but they're not the ones that's at home with that child. They're not the one that's having those hard conversations.
They didn't birth that child.
They're literally part of a big bureaucratic system. And so the school has no business making those kind of judgment calls. Now, again, if you want to have an ongoing conversation with the parents about how to approach that, that's fine and well. But at the end of the day, if there's a conflict, in my opinion, the law needs to side with the parents, right? And this does go into a much bigger parental rights discussion. And at the end of the day, that is the question here, right? Look, what if this wasn't even about transgender, right? What if this was a student that says, you know what, I'm gonna go get a tattoo. I'm gonna get a big back tattoo, and the teacher, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna get a teardrop tattoo or something like that. And if you tell, the child tells the, parent, and the parent says, no, you can't get a tattoo. And then if a member of the staff says you should go and get a tattoo, that's a problem, right? We need to have that conversation. So again, I know that it's not a perfect comparison, but my frustration when you brought this to my attention, like my wife, we've been homeschooling all of our kids, and again, with the whole homeschooling, I'm like, okay, is it really that bad? And I'm like, ugh. Every time she was the one that came to me with this story, and she's like, see, this is why we're homeschooling, right? Because you can't trust them. This is about trust. At the end of the day, this is about trust. Do you trust that if you send your child into that school system, that school system will have your back? And in this case, the parents have no trust. You can't trust someone that's going to lie to you about what's going on with your child. And again, there are a few lies that have more potency than involving one's children.
Yeah.
So I think the school's in hot water on this one.
Yeah, and realistically, at this point, I wouldn't even expect the school to support the parent's decision because, I don't expect the school system to support every parental decision that I have, but I do expect to be notified if there is a massive change going on in my child's life, right? I would need to know about that so that I can look out for certain things so that, at this point it becomes irrelevant, whether or not I am for or against the transition. There are real issues, including, like I said, suicide rates and substance abuse and just things that I would like to support my child. Whatever is decided within our family is our family's business. But at least let me know what is happening. Don't hide it from me. This is important.
And here's a telltale sign. The fact that they had to hide it in the first place tells you they know they're in the wrong. That's how you know.
My mom used to say
right?
that.
Yeah, like the fact that you had to hide it, you're wrong, right? Because you're lying, right? If you're having to cover that up, you know that this is something the parents won't approve of. You know that this is something that is ultimately bad, or maybe you may think that it's good for the child or bad, but it would get you in trouble. That's why they're lying about it. And I think that if the parents are looking for some sort of recourse, and it's sad. It is sad that it requires a lawsuit. This is the kind of thing where you should be able to go to the principal and be like, hey, what's going on here, right? And the principal should be able to say, we're sorry, we handled this appropriately, we're going to take disciplinary action, and we're not going to do this. A story like this, no matter how the law goes, no matter how the lawsuit goes, this is going to have a negative impact on education, right? Because now you're going to have more parents. I mean, look, if I had a child in Arundel County schools, I'd be like, wait, what don't I know about my child? Look, this goes back to COVID. Remember with COVID and parents were like watching for the first time what's happening in their classroom? Now every parent is, and should be, and I mean, if you've got your child in public schools, you need to be, we always tell people, find out what's going on in your kid's classroom, right? Yeah. We always talk about their peers. Now we got to worry about their teachers. Now we got to worry about their guidance counselors. Again, it is a really, really tragic thing that we can't have this trust. And I think that the next step is to rebuild that trust, right? Yeah. You need to have that confidence and that trust that if I take my child and I send them to Anne Arundel County Public Schools, I want to know that we have a partnership. And if we don't have a partnership, then we need to look at some other options.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me, Torrey, because to me the idea that the school would require, you don't have to agree. The schools and the parents do not have to agree on how to raise a child because it's not their job to raise the child. I am raising the child. There are a lot of different policies in school, and things that we do in our house that I'm sure a lot of other educators wouldn't agree with. My kids don't have cell phones. They're not going to have cell phones for a long time. We have different rules for screen time. We have, there are rules about what they can and can't wear. I don't care what the school allows. There are rules in my house about what we can and can't wear. So what I'm saying is that this doesn't have to be an antagonistic relationship.
Right.
This can be, and I get it, the lawsuit has some different aspects that you and I have not talked about, right? There is clear disagreement about how this child should be raised. What I am saying is that it doesn't have to get to that level. Right? We don't have to be enemies here, right? If we all agree that we care about the child, then start from there. But I'm just telling you, right when I was questioning if I needed to write another tuition check, Torrey, I was like, well,
I mean,
I guess here we go.
Every homeschooler parent is like, I guess I was right.
Well, speaking of hiding things, Torrey, Mitch McConnell, what's the over-under?
Oh, well, first, I will say that we really... Well, first of all, look, I got to quickly remind folks, please subscribe to our Patreon. So we want to keep the lights on here. We're doing everything that we can to continue to create great content. And like literally every day, I'm texting Yuripzy, she's texting me. There's stuff that's going on. We want to do this full time. We want to bring you more. We want to bring you like 3 shows a week. That's our goal, right? We want to do 3 shows a week. We want to be able to come in and do an in-depth analysis on this lawsuit or on the housing bill, all of those things. All of that is possible when we get support. So please, if you don't mind, check out our Patreon, $5 a month. Everyone helps. We also have a $15 a month subscription and a $50 a month subscription. We do have some folks that are taking advantage of that. And then, of course, Facebook, X, Instagram, social media. If you follow our platform, share our content with your friends. If you know other people that are political independents, or maybe they're moderate Republicans, or even hard-right Republicans. We have MAGA Republicans. We welcome everyone. We're free range. We will have a discussion about the issues, so make sure that you're supporting us. So back to Weekend at Mitch McConnell. I have seen Weekend at see Yuripzy Morgan. She always nails me down on these pop culture. I'm a nerd and I do my own thing. And so like I will get if you catch me on a pop culture reference, you will get me every single time. But Weekend at Bernie's, that was a movie where they basically had to keep this guy to make him pretend he's alive. Mitch
Everybody
McConnell died in June. I'm convinced of it. He died on June the 14th. I don't know. That was the last time he was seen. They loaded him into hospital. They said he was brain dead, and now there's all sorts of discussions. Some people are like, "Oh, I know. I went and had a conversation with him. He's great, and he's looking forward to getting back to the Senate." It is a bad situation. I have a lot of compassion for these elderly politicians that are in these positions of influence, and because they are politicians, their humanity is just being completely cast aside. It's not about whether they're human beings and need compassion. We saw this with Joe Biden. It's about what are the political implications of you dying right now. How horrible is that?
Yeah.
Like, you can't die right now because we need your seat.
We're going to need you to...
Can you hold on for just a few more months?
Even imagine Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But I do think, like, I may be a little bit more cynical on this, and I have compassion for them too, but I do think that something goes on when you have been in power for that long. Like, Mitch McConnell is not just a U.S. senator, right? Like, it's a huge deal to be a U.S. senator, but to be Mitch McConnell, everybody knows
He's a
who
name
he
brand.
is. Yeah, exactly. And it's probably very difficult to give up that power and that authority and that, that the power that goes with it. But by God, at some point, you have got to, you gotta hang up the towel. You gotta take a break, retire, get out of here, please, before you literally die in office.
Which many of these people do. And so now the question is, because a lot of these people don't want to relinquish this. Joe Biden, great example. He did not want to step down. He was ultimately forced to. Now we're asking, should there be mechanisms in place to force that, right? And there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can do it with term limits. We can do it with age limits. A lot of people like age limits where, you reach a certain age, you gotta start taking, tests and things like that. And the problem with both, term limits are more neutral. Age limits are tough, right? Because age limits are super flexible. I know people that are in their 90s that are sharp as a razor blade, and I know people that are in their 50s and 60s that are really struggling. And so it's a very fluid thing to do, but I don't know. What do you think about solving this problem? I don't think anybody should die in office. Like, I feel like, if you're doing great work, you should be able to enjoy that, retire, and give that work over to someone else. What should we do? Term limits or age limits?
You know who I'm mad at about this issue is voters. Because let's be honest. Yes, we can have term limits. Yes, we can have age requirements. But the only reason we have to get there is because people keep voting for these people.
That's a good point.
Why has Mitch McConnell been elected over and over and over again? Ask yourself this. Dianne Feinstein. You couldn't. She was she was duly elected, Torrey. Nobody is saying that she stole an election, right? Nobody is saying that she went in and changed ballots. She was voted in by the people of California. Same with Mitch McConnell. These people stay in power because voters keep them there. Yeah. Now, the only reason we're talking about age limits and term limits is because people won't do the right thing and vote them out of office.
Yeah, I mean, look, it kind of goes. I mean, wasn't Andy Harris just about like, you know, whether even people should vote for their senators at all? Maybe they should be appointed by the legislature. It does bring up this question about democracy, and sometimes democracy does things that are dumb, right? And you know, people make decisions that are, you know, not very informed. I wouldn't say against their best interest, right? Democrats love to say, well, people vote against their best interest. No, it's not that. It's their people do not get informed. I'll bet you most of the people that voted for Mitch McConnell have no idea who that man is. They just see his name, see he's a Republican. Oh yeah, I guess. I mean,
They probably don't even know he's that
We're
old.
in this all the time. You guys are in this all the time, but the vast majority of Americans could not name their senator. They could not name their congressman. And so in the light of this very uninformed society, do we need to step in with policies? I don't know. I mean, the solution would be to educate people, right? In my view, everyone that's going and voting for a senator or a congressman or someone, they should know who that person is and think critically about that. I just don't know that that's realistic in this day and age.
No, and then of course, you know, as soon as you start talking about Joe Biden can't even tell which side of the stage to get off of, you know,
Right.
Then all of a sudden you're accused of ageism. But the reality is that there are other mechanisms in place in different fields. Like, for example, the FBI, right?
Yep.
The FBI has mandatory retirement. Did you know that?
I know the military did. I didn't know the FBI did. Yeah.
and when you think about that, I'm like, okay, the argument against term limits has typically been that people have experience and that we need that experience. We need that institutional experience, that wisdom. Like if you're at work, you know, and there's somebody who is like, yes, they're older, but man, they know everything, Torrey. This is the person that you can ask, you know, hey, the internet is out. How do I fix this? To
Got to kick it right over here in the third hall and it'll go back on.
they know everything. They know everything about the building. They know everything about
Yes.
work. This is the person who has a spreadsheet for everything. To say that that person has to automatically retire, right, at a certain age, then yeah, I get it. You know, the term limit conversation can get pretty squishy. But then when you think about institutions like the military, like the FBI, that have mandatory retirement ages, you're like, oh, so maybe it's some of it is just like we get tunnel vision and we forget that other people can grow into that same institutional knowledge, right? And maybe that will outweigh any potential harm of having those people forced to retire.
Yeah, look, term limits, in my opinion, do a great job because to me, it introduces a new element, right?
Yeah.
Because if you know you're term limited, smart politicians, and again, I think here in Maryland, we had some missed opportunities, but smart politicians will think down the road and be like, who would I like to replace me? And start grooming them early on. I know we don't like to use the G word, right? But it's what it is, right? You take time and
Teaching
you
them.
spend them, you show them the ropes and be like, I would like you to be my successor, right? And that, to me, that's a healthy way of passing on that knowledge, right? And in many institutions, this is how private institutions work, right? This is how every corporation works, right? These people that get into these executive offices, they're always looking, you know, because they want to get promoted,
Who's
they want to
next?
get moved on. Who's next in line? I think that our Congress would run a lot more efficiently if we just started thinking that way. And whether it's with age limits or with term limits, there needs to be some mechanism. And part of it is just going to be voter education, right? It's going to be us doing our podcast every single week, trying to get as many people as possible to just think critically about the issues that they're facing. And I think that'll help move the needle some. With any hope, you know, the more people that subscribe, the more people that get involved with our platform, they'll be thinking more critically about whether or not we should be sending these people to office again. But that's a longer term solution. I think in the midterm, we could probably start thinking, and even most Americans are like, yeah, we could probably have an honest conversation about term limits.
Yeah, and let me just ask you this real quick. Is Mitch McConnell up for re-election?
That's a good question, actually.
Because
I don't know.
So I asked that because, you know, part of me, as you were talking, I was like, you know, well, also the family needs to play a role in this because let's not forget Jill Biden, who thought Joe Biden had a stroke and then let the man sit there.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Like, what a horrible, like, honestly, what a horrible person.
Don't do that to me, Joanna, please.
If my husband suspects I'm having a stroke, like, by all, please, you have permission to get me out of there. But my point is that, you know,
I know
with
him,
Mitch,
he would.
Yeah, no, he is so ready to be like, no, we're on vacation, extended vacation here. But I bring that up because while it's easy to say, you know, like Mitch McConnell's family should also be looking at this and saying, like, you didn't see him deteriorating, but then also you got to remember that the Senate is 6 years, every 6 years.
Yeah.
That means that maybe he was fined 5 years ago, Torrey. Maybe he was fined 4 years ago. 6 years is a long time. And you know what his...
And age advances very, very rapidly. It can. And so I get that.
I mean, like when Joe Biden first ran and beat Donald Trump, that was a guy
Totally
who
different
looked,
men.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, like 2 years ago. Oh my gosh.
Robot Joe Biden.
Yes, that was a whole different story. And it looks like I think he is going to he is up for re-election, right? Yeah. So so to your point, you couldn't. Please tell me that you have thought about
now
a
it's too
replacement,
late.
right?
I mean, look, he can't groom anyone at this point. I mean, presumably he's got people that he's been working
would
with.
hope
But I
so.
just think that overall, as a nation, we just need to start thinking more critically about this. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Great topics today. I really, really enjoy having these conversations, and I hope that you guys enjoy them as well. As always, please make sure to check out our Patreon, $5 a month. You can help us keep the lights on here, Facebook, X, Instagram. Share this content. Again, our goal is to reach out to the people who don't necessarily ascribe to one political model or another. Doesn't mean you're not registered as a Democrat or not registered as a Republican. Look, Yuripzy Morgan, she's a Republican, but she's persona non grata.
Registered Republican.
But I think we need more people that are willing to think like that. So if this is your vibe, if this is something that you like, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend. And again, we'll be back next week with more great content with Free Range Politics.
And Torrey's homework is to watch
Game of
Thrones.
What time?
All right, next week.